So, this is my review for technically the Blood on Satan's Claw, but this movie is also called Blood on Satan's Claw, and also, I guess, Satan's Skin. But for the sake of this video, I'm calling it The Blood on Satan's Claw. I'm going to have my glasses on for this because I wrote what my thoughts down and I am nearsighted, so I'm looking at my computer screen. So, pretty short review, but The Blood on Satan's Claw is a British folk horror, I guess is what you would call it now, folk horror movie that is apparently credited as being a pioneer in the genre. Released in 1971, it appears to have a cult following who seem to enjoy the movie very, very much. On Letterboxd, which is how I found it or came across this movie, the average rating on Letterboxd is 3.3 stars. So that's the reason why I was like, okay, I guess I'll try this out. I'll watch it. Let's see where it goes. And admittedly, I was also interested in the movie because there are some songs that have been inspired by this movie. At least some of the music I've listened to has been inspired by this movie. So the idea of it, though, is that a corpse is discovered in a field on a farm, and eventually the whole town becomes like in league with Satan, slowly falling into this like creepy, evil behavior. And in the movie itself, like a couple of times, they're labeled as devil worshippers. This movie is very much in line or in the same lane, I guess you would say, as stuff like The Wicker Man, which came out a couple of years after this. So, despite the idea to the plot having or being like interesting and having a lot of potential, I found the execution of the movie to be boring. Honestly, I feel bad about that in a way, considering how it seems so beloved in the decades since its release, but I just found myself bored while watching it. I feel bad to admit that, but that's my honest opinion. I was really bored watching this movie. There is a lot of reference, though, to like British witch hunting and kind of like devil lore, which I do appreciate. And there are nods to the old superstitions. I did find that interesting, but much of the dialogue and acting in the movie is what detracted what could have made this interesting. There are parts that I enjoyed, but overall, I found that the movie was too long for how boring it was. The movie is 1 hour and 36 minutes long, but I started looking at the timer after the first 30 minutes. I repeatedly found myself looking, just waiting for the movie to end, and for me, it dragged on. I didn't feel any connection with any of the characters. I just felt like a viewer that was watching random things happen. The acting and dialogue I found to be laughable, though the soundtrack and filmography's great. The soundtrack is okay, but the filmography, the scenes itself were shot very well. The camera work is very beautiful. So it is strange to me how a movie can look this good while being so bad. I suppose that the campiness is something that others would like, and usually I would enjoy this too, but I just could not get into this movie. Like I said, I feel bad about that. I wanted to. There's elements that I'm like, yeah, I should on paper like this movie, but I just really don't. What bothered me the most, honestly, was the dialogue because it was written with this emphasis of being of the time, so to speak, which on Wikipedia is the 18th century or the 1700s, but in an article that I clipped, just like a summary from 1971. This article I clipped said the movie was based in the 1600s, and maybe that's just, a typo, but it's even still, 18th century, potentially 17th century is when the movie is based. What bothered me, and maybe this is pedantic, was the fact that the word thou is constantly used in the dialogue, which is actually anachronistic. I thought, I felt like I was being a stickler by finding this annoying, but I ended up looking this up because it really bugged me. I was like, why do they keep saying that? Why do they keep saying that? So I looked it up and it turns out, hey, I was right. It is anachronistic. It turns out that the word thou was not commonly used in the English language, especially when speaking to one another. So, upon further research, just a couple of Google searches, it turns out that the word thou was spoken in a derogatory sense. So, it makes sense to me that the actors, when watching this movie, they would fumble the dialogue. It was very awkward. So, it makes sense in a way that the actors were unable to make the dialogue sound real. Because simply it wasn't. Honestly, I found the movie to have a disappointing ending where there's like the Sabbath, like a witch's Sabbath, and the main evil lady whose name is Angel ends up being like impaled at the sword, something like that. The devil or the the demon they're worshiping is held at sword point, and then we assume he's burned in the fire. So, once again, I found the movie to be incredibly disappointing. And honestly, when it finally ended, I booed. I booed when the credits rolled. I was like, boo! Because I was like, man, this movie fucking sucked. I know, there's a cult following to it. There's people that really love it. But I thought it fucking sucked. Personally, I don't want to watch this movie ever again. And I'm not like offended necessarily. I was just like, I think it's because of the hype. You know what I mean? Like there's a cult following and in the decades since people love it even more. And I'm like, okay, so it's hyped up. There's songs and music based off of this movie. And then you watch the movie and it doesn't live up to the hype. I think that's what bothers me about it. Maybe if I went in completely blind, I would have at least been like, okay, it's kind of dumb. They didn't say it that word back then, but I would have had an excuse, right? I could have excused it. But a couple other details, though, is that other than me feeling like it was a waste of time, I looked up some more info on the movie, and apparently it was like partially inspired by the Manson murders, which is interesting, and in some ways I can see like a slight resemblance where the devil worshippers are kind of like, they're a cult, basically. They are a cult. But this doesn't really have much more similarity than that, Despite that similarity, I just don't have any desire to watch this movie again. I know obviously there's some people that would like this, and there are people that really they do like it. I don't know who I would recommend this to, in my personal opinion. Maybe if you've heard of The Wicker Man, and that's another reason why I watched it. I was like, oh, I've seen The Wicker Man, the original one, so I thought maybe I would be interested in this. But having liked The Wicker Man, oddly enough, I don't like this one, so I don't know who I would recommend this to either. Anyway, I don't know how to end this review other than that. I didn't like it, didn't care for it. I guess I would give it an F. That's it.